And a very good evening to the YouTube watchers. This is Live Irish Myths episode 15. We'll join in with the Facebook watchers or the viewers now. Hopefully, all going well. And a very good evening, everybody. This is Live Irish Myths. I'm Anthony Murphy from Mythical Ireland. Fáilte tá céad míle fáilte roimh go léir. 100,000 welcomes to you all, no matter where you are in the world, and hopefully you're all keeping safe and well. And the first thing that we must do tonight, because it seems to be happening certainly in Britain, and I'm not sure that it isn't happening in Ireland, is that we're applauding the frontline workers who are dealing with the current crisis. That is, those who are working in the health service and, of course, those working in the various branches of government, trying to keep everything running and also trying to deal with the crisis. They have an unenviable job, and they have risen greatly to the challenge. We are completely in their debt, and we pay tribute to them at this time, hoping that the end comes sooner rather than later, for them and for their families and for all their loved ones. And so just a special thought before we start for the people who are unable perhaps to enjoy these storytelling sessions because they are busy saving lives in various roles. But anyway, good evening. This is episode 15, no less, of Live Irish Myths. Who would have thought? The time has gone around very quickly. It's been a surreal time, of course, and we're all trying to deal in our own way with the situation, as it were. I just want to check the YouTube feed. It seems to be okay. Perhaps somebody on YouTube could say, Erica Rivertree, Gia. Good evening to you, Erica. You're very welcome, and I hope all is well with you. Dana Hicks says hello from San Diego. Hello, Dana, one of our regulars, and a lovely name. Tua de Danan, huh? That's a nice name. So tonight we're going to be doing the... Sorry, just got rid of that message. Tonight we're going to be reading the second part of the fate of the Children of Lir, which we started last night, and I read approximately half, and it's just long enough to keep us going for a while anyway. Aaron Durrett is watching from near Seattle, says, hi Anthony, another beautiful spring day. Well, can I tell you, it was a fabulous day here today. Less windy than it was yesterday, sunny and mild. Thankfully, because there's no complete lockdown, myself and one or two of my sons, one in the first case and two in the second case, we had two trips to Sheon to Newgrange today, one at lunchtime and one this evening to watch the sunset. I have captured lots of footage, and I should say, as usual, thank you very much to all of the Mythical Ireland patrons who helped to make these webcasts possible. In particular, tonight I want to mention Dennis Lynch, who is my newest patron on Mythical Ireland Patreon. That's patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. Dennis, thank you very much for your generous support. And those of you who join at the Bronze Age level are, of course, entitled to early and exclusive access to a lot of video content. And I have captured a lot of footage in the past few weeks, which I intend to bring to the Bronze Age patrons at the earliest opportunity. Okay, so before we continue, I have to say hello to a number of people who've joined us. Paul Cochran, evening, sir. Just listen to your piece, Lament for Newgrange. Wonderful. Paul Gowran, second G silent in our family. Okay, Paul Gowran, what a burden. Paul, a Lament for Newgrange. I'm not sure which one that is, but maybe you'd share the link and they can all look at it later on. Shamie McCarville, good evening, Shamie. You're very welcome. How are you? Esther Guggisberg is watching. Esther, hope all is well with you. Barb Jordan is in Florida. Your pictures today were beautiful. Thank you, Barb. Very glad to be able to share them. Very glad to be able to spread a little bit of joy. Esther says, finally here again. I'm so happy to see you live. Matt Byrne is watching. Matt is the local watching in Drogheda here in Drogheda at the gateway to Glannavoyne, the Boyne Valley. Linda Nolan says hi from Phoenix. Hello, Linda. Maeve Fianna Callahan is in Portland. I loved today's photos as well. Very good evening to you, Maeve. Vicky Wallace Southall is saying hello, my friends. Hello, Vicky. Paul O'Gowran. Cuchulainn. Ah, yes, Queenu Cuchulainn. Very good, yeah. Well, maybe we'll share that later on, will we? Went towards the end. Judy McQueen is in Oregon. Hello, Judy. Philip Murray in California. Let's not forget about Mildoon and King Bran. Let's not indeed. Matt Byrne says, good evening, Anthony. Matt, hope you're keeping well, and I hope you're keeping sane is the main thing. The Curious Celt says hello to you. Royal Hill Tara Ranger says hello, Professor. Yeah, Professor of what? That's the question. So there you go. Okay, that's us up to date with all the greetings, so we can get down to action. But before we start, I should say that Bowen has been on the list for a while in terms of an episode. Robert Arbuckle is checking in from Derry. Very good evening to you, Robert. Ondura. That's the Oakwood, isn't it? Laura is in Blessington. I was delighted that you quoted Eliade. I am Romanian and I consider Eliade the most outstanding philosopher. I've only in the past number of months come into possession of a few of his books, and I'm greatly intrigued and really, really very impressed. Yeah, The Myth of the Eternal Return. So Bowen is in Dindshenachus Part 3, the metrical Dindshenachus as translated by Edward Gwynn. That is on its way to me. I believe it will be delivered tonight via Parcel Motel. In the meantime, this morning, Volume 2 arrived this morning. I already had Part 1, and I also have Part 4, which is an original, I have to show you this, 1924 volume. Now, it is a little bit fragile, and I'm going to have to get somebody who specialises in putting covers onto the book, because the cover is very flimsy and it is not in great shape. But that is, I mean, look, there's Talchu. Look, as soon as I open it, there's Talchu. So that is going to provide us with much fare. And Part 3 is on its way to me, the one containing Bowen, and I'm hoping that we can get round to dealing with that in an episode in the next couple of days. So the dog is getting excited again. I have a feeling this dog wants to be on the live webcasts. So anyway, the Dindshenachus, a very valuable collection of place name lore about all of the eminent places of old Ireland. So, okay, a few more to catch up on. Federica is in Italy. Nice to be here again. Lovely to have you, Federica, and I hope that everything is still going okay for you in Italy, because I know you've had a hard time over there. William Butch King, hello again from the USA to you and everybody else. And yes, Ihawa, William. Maeve Fianna Callahan says mythical professor. Wendy Holmes, I'm blushing. Wendy Holmes says, Wendy again, can't wait for today's lesson story. Jane Myatt, hi from High River, Alberta. A very good evening, Jane, to you and all our friends in Canada. And with every good wish and blessing from the Irish people to all of the people of Canada, hope that you're keeping safe and you're keeping well. Jacqueline Kennedy Art is watching. Hello, Jacqueline, you're very welcome again. Jules Cousins, hello, Jules, back again for more punishment, huh? And Federica says, whoa, Anthony, great books. Of course, the Metrical Dindshenachus is an extremely valuable collection of work. Jacqueline says, hi there, bring Coda in. No, I mean, you don't. I would be afraid that Coda would wreck the place and knock the cameras and stuff. Maybe someday at the beginning of the episode I'll have him here, and I'll have one of the kids. Saskia actually is the other dog. She's a husky and she's very settled. She'd be much easier to deal with. Gary Collins says, hi Anthony. Hello Gary, another of the locals watching. And over on YouTube, Dunn M says, hello Anthony, hope everyone is doing well. All well here so far, thank goodness. And the Curious Celt says, the Curious Celt and Royal Hill Tara Ranger are having a chat with each other on YouTube, and look what we're doing. We're facilitating conversation, which is great at a distance, because that's the way we have to do things at the moment. But sure, what of it? We're all right so far, aren't we? And aren't we blessed? Aren't we really lucky that we have broadband and smartphones and computers and all of these ways of keeping in touch with each other? You know, when I was a kid, I learned to type on a typewriter, and I remember the pre-computer era. I'm actually old enough now to remember that. I know, disgraceful. So now, back to our story, the fate of the Children of Lir, and this is chapter 5. Wow. So glad to have so many of you along for the journey. As to the Children of Lir, miserable was their abode, and evil their plight on the sea of Moyle. Now remember, this is the sea between Ireland and Scotland. Their hearts were wrung with sorrow for their father and their friends, and when they looked towards the steep, rocky, far-stretching coasts, and saw the great, dark, wild sea around them, they were overwhelmed with fear and despair. They began also to suffer from cold and hunger, so that all the hardships they had endured on Loch Derivara appeared as nothing compared with their suffering on the sea current of Moyle. And so they lived, till one night a great tempest fell upon the sea. Finola, when she saw the sky filled with black, threatening clouds, thus addressed her brothers. Beloved brothers, we have made a bad preparation for this night, for it is certain that the coming storm will separate us. And now let us appoint a place of meeting, or it may happen that we shall never see each other again. And they answered, Dear sister, you speak truly and wisely, and let us fix on Carricknarone, for that is a rock that we are all very well acquainted with. And they appointed Carricknarone as their place of meeting. Midnight came, and with it came the beginning of the storm. A wild, rough wind swept over the dark sea. The lightnings flashed, and the great waves rose, and increased their violence and their thunder. The swans were soon scattered over the waters, so that not one of them knew in what direction the others had been driven. During all that night they were tossed about by the roaring winds and waves, and it was with much difficulty they preserved their lives. Dog is scratching. He's determined. He's trying to tell me something. He wants to be on TV. Towards morning the storm abated, and the sea became again calm and smooth, and Finola swam to Carricknarone. But she found none of her brothers there, neither could she see any trace of them when she looked all round from the summit of the rock over the wide face of the sea. Then she became terrified, for she thought she would never see them again, and she began to lament them plaintively in these words. The heart-breaking anguish and woe of this life I am able no longer to bear. My wings are benumbed with this pitiless frost. My 3 little brothers are scattered and lost, and I am left here to despair. My 3 little brothers I never shall see, till the dead shall arise from the tomb. How I sheltered them oft with my wings on my breast, and I soothed their sorrows and lulled them to rest, as the night fell around us in gloom. Ah, where are my brothers, and why have I lived this last worst affliction to know? What now is there left but a life of despair? For alas, I am able no longer to bear this heart-breaking anguish and woe. Just making sure I'm up to date with everybody. Jacqueline, dogs are doing the sound effects. Yeah, and this story always tears me up. Yeah, it's a sad one, but look, yeah, Joyce calls them romances, you know. I suppose. There, he's at it again. Okay, you'll get your turn. David Gilroy is watching. Hello, David. Very good evening to you. Soon after this, she looked again over the sea, and she saw Conn coming towards the rock, with his head drooping and his feathers all drenched with the salt spray, and she welcomed him with joyful heart. Not long after, Fiachra appeared, but he was so faint with wet and cold and hardship that he was scarce able to reach the place where Finola and Conn were standing. And when they spoke to him, he could not speak one word in return. So Finola placed the two under her wings, and she said, "If Aid were here now, all would be happy with us." In a little time they saw Aid coming towards them, with head erect and feathers all dry and radiant, and Finola gave him a joyful welcome. She then placed him under the feathers of her breast, while Conn and Fiachra remained under her wings. And she said to them, "My dear brothers, though ye may think this night very bad, we shall have many like it from this time forth." So they continued for a long time on the Sea of Moyle, suffering hardships of every kind, till one winter night came upon them, of great wind and of snow and frost so severe that nothing they ever before suffered could be compared to the misery of that night. And Finola uttered these words: "Our life is a life of woe, no shelter or rest we find. How bitterly drives the snow, how cold is this wintry wind," find and wind not quite rhyming in this regard, "from the icy spray of the sea, from the wind of the bleak northeast. I shelter my brothers three under my wings and breast," and again east and breast not quite rhyming. "Our stepmother sent us here, and misery well we know. In cold and hunger and fear, our life is a life of woe." Yes, good evening, Richard. Richard Moore is watching. Very nice to have you along, Richard. Please ignore the dog in the background. He's rather excitable. He has been fed and walked today. So he's just, he's a pup. He's only 9 months young. Another year passed away on the Seal of Moyle, and one night in January a dreadful frost came down on the earth and sea, so that the waters were frozen into a solid floor of ice all round them. The swans remained on Carricknarone all night, and their feet and their wings were frozen to the icy surface, so that they had to strive hard to move from their places in the morning. And they left the skin of their feet, the quills of their wings, and the feathers of their breasts clinging to the rock. Alex Casterson says, "Hello, Anthony, we're here. Sorry we're late. We did the clap, but now we're here." Yes, and we also, at the beginning, Alex, we applauded all of the frontline workers and the health workers who are dealing with the current crisis. And hats off to them for doing a difficult job under trying circumstances. And let's hope that they are victorious in bringing this under control quickly. "Sad is our condition this night, my beloved brothers," said Finola, "for we are forbidden to leave the Sea of Moyle, and yet we cannot bear the salt water, for when it enters our wounds I fear we shall die of pain." And thus she spoke this lay: "Our fate is mournful here today, our bodies bare and chill, drenched by the bitter briny spray, and torn on this rocky hill. Cruel our stepmother's jealous heart, that banished us from home, transformed to swans by magic art, to swim the ocean foam. This bleak and snowy winter day, our bath is the ocean wide. In thirsty summer's burning ray, our drink the briny tide. And here mid rugged rocks we dwell, in this tempestuous bay, 4 children bound by magic spell, our fate is sad today." Clearly Coda agrees. They were, however, forced to swim out on the stream of Moyle, all wounded and torn as they were, for though the brine was sharp and bitter, they were not able to avoid it. They stayed as near the coast as they could, till after a long time the feathers of their breasts and wings grew again, and their wounds were healed. After this they lived on for a great number of years, sometimes visiting the shores of Erin and sometimes the headlands of Alban. But they always returned to the sea stream of Moyle, for it was destined to be their home till the end of 300 years. One day they came to the mouth of the Bann, on the northeast coast of Éireann, and looking inland, they saw a stately troop of horsemen approaching directly from the southwest. They were mounted on white steeds and clad in bright coloured garments, and as they wound towards the shore, their arms glittered in the sun. Catherine Wall McManus says, "Hi Anthony, sorry I'm late. Very good to have you, Catherine. Fáilte. And don't worry, better late than never. Absolutely, no problem whatsoever." Erica says, "Hope everything is okay." I'm not sure if you're talking about the dog or the health situation, but the dog is absolutely fine. He has company. "Do ye know yonder cavalcade?" said Finola to her brothers. "We know them not," they replied, "but it is likely they are a party of the Milesians, or perchance a troop of our own people, the Daedanans." They swam towards the shore to find out who the strangers were, and the cavalcade on their part, when they saw the swans, knew them at once, and moved towards them till they were within speaking distance. Now these were a party of the Daedanans, and the chiefs who commanded them were the two sons of Bovgerug, the Daedanan king, namely Aed the keen-witted, and Fergus the chess-player, with a third part of the fairy host. In other words, 33%, putting a figure on it, a third of the Daedanans. And when it refers to Fergus being a chess player, of course, that is a translation from the Irish word ficial, and ficial is an early Irish version of chess. Nick Eska Casterton said, "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Hello, Nick. You're very welcome. Anna Pitterina says, "Good evening, everyone." You're very welcome, Anna. And Shay Ma says, "Good evening." Fáilte wrote, "They had been for a long time searching for the Children of Lir along the northern shores of Éireann, and now that they had found them, they were joyful, and they and the swans greeted each other with tender expressions of friendship and love. The Children of Lir inquired after the Daedanans, and particularly after their father Lir, and Bovgerug above all the rest of their friends and acquaintances." Pardon me. "They are all well," replied the chiefs, "and they and the Daedanans in general are now gathered together in the house of your father at She Finnaha, celebrating the feast of age, pleasantly and agreeably. Their happiness would indeed be complete, only that you are not with them, and that they know not where you have been since you left Loch Deravara." "Miserable has been our life since that day," said Finola, "and no tongue can tell the suffering and sorrow we have endured on the Sea of Moyle." And she chanted these words: "Ah, happy is Lir's bright home today, with mead and music and poet's lay, but gloomy and cold his children's home, forever tossed on the briny foam. Our wreathed feathers are thin and light, when the wind blows keen through the wintry night, yet oft we were robed long, long ago in purple mantles and furs of snow. On Moyle's bleak current our food and wine, our sandy seaweed and bitter brine, yet oft we feasted in days of old, and hazel mead drank from cups of gold. Our beds are rocks in the dripping caves, our lullaby song the roar of the waves, but soft rich couches once we pressed, and harpers lulled us each night to rest. Lonely we swim on the billowy main, through frost and snow, through storm and rain. Alas for the days when round us moved the chiefs and princes and friends we loved. My little twin brothers beneath my wings lie close when the north wind bitterly stings, and Aed close nestles before my breast. Thus side by side through the night we rest. Our father's fond kisses, Bovgerug's embrace, the light of Manannán's godlike face, the love of Angus, all are o'er, and we live on the billows forevermore. Catherine Woodruff says, "Hi everyone, great to be here again to cherish these grand old tales. Tá fáilte wrote, Tá wrote, Catherine, and you're very welcome. After this, Catherine Wall says, heartbreaking. Yes, but don't forget what we were talking about earlier, Mircea Eliade and the myth of the eternal return. Busy Bork says, this is just my second time on here. Waiting. Anthony is probably reading stories to his 5 young ones to quiet them down. Me, sitting knitting in Napa Valley, California. Well, you're very welcome along too. And we have a momentary issue with the connection. So, sorry about that. You're very welcome along from California to live Irish stories and myths and tales. After this, they bade each other farewell, for it was not permitted to the children of Lir to remain away from the stream of Moyle. As soon as they had parted, the fairy cavalcade returned to Sheev Finnaha, where they related to the Dedanan chiefs all that had passed, and described the condition of the children of Lir. And the chiefs answered, it is not in our power to help them, but we are glad that they are living. And we know that in the end the enchantment will be broken, and that they will be freed from their sufferings. As to the children of Lir, they returned to their home on the Sea of Moyle, and there they remained till they had fulfilled their term of years. And remember that that's 300 years. 300 years on Loch Derivara, 300 years on the Sea of Moyle. And now they have to go to the Western Sea. And when their 300 years were ended, Finola said to her brothers, it is time for us to leave this place, for our period here has come to an end. The hour has come, the hour has come. 300 years have passed. We leave this bleak and gloomy home, and we fly to the west at last. We leave forever the stream of Moyle, on the clear cold wind we go, 300 years round Glora's Isle, where wintry tempests blow. No sheltered home, no place of rest, from the tempest's angry blast. Fly, brothers, fly to the distant west, for the hour has come at last. So the swans left the Sea of Moyle and flew westward till they reached Iras Daunan and the sea around the Isle of Glora. There they remained for a long time, suffering much from storm and cold, and in nothing better off than they were on the Sea of Moyle. It chanced that a young man named Ebrick, of good family, the owner of a tract of land lying along the shore, observed the birds and heard their singing. He took great delight in listening to their plaintive music, and he walked down to the shore almost every day to see them and to converse with them, so that he came to love them very much, and they also loved him. This young man told his neighbours about the speaking swans, so that the matter became noised abroad, and it was he who arranged the story after hearing it from themselves, and related it as it is related here. Again their hardships were renewed, and to describe what they suffered on the great open western sea would be only to tell over again, the story of their life on the Moyle. But one particular night came, of frost so hard that the whole face of the sea, from Iras Daunan to Achill, was frozen into a thick floor of ice, and the snow was driven by a northwest wind. On that night it seemed to the 3 brothers that they could not bear their sufferings any longer, and they began to utter loud and pitiful complaints. Finola tried to console them, but she was not able to do so, for they only lamented the more, and then she herself began to lament with the others. Mike Egan says, hi, first time watching, great story, thank you for telling it. You're very welcome along, Mike. Fáilte go dtí Teach Murchu and Ismisha Antone. You're very, very welcome to the library here in Droichead Áha, and I hope that you enjoy this. And of course, the first part of this story is already available as a video on the YouTube, the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel, and indeed on the Mythical Ireland Facebook page. But you're very welcome. It's great to see new faces. Camilla Relland is watching. Hello, Camilla. Very good of you to join us. Hope you're keeping well, and I hope that wherever you are, that you're in safe isolation and you're healthy in isolation as well, and not feeling too isolated. After a time, Finola spoke to them and said, "My dear brothers, believe in the great and splendid God of truth, who made the earth with its fruits and the sea with its wonders. Put your trust in him, and he will send you help and comfort." "We believe in him," said they. "And I also," said Finola, "believe in God, who is perfect in everything and who knows all things." And at the destined hour they all believed, and the Lord of heaven sent them help and protection, so that neither cold nor tempest molested them from that time forth, as long as they abode on the western sea. So they continued at the point of Irrasdownan till they had fulfilled their appointed time there, and Finola addressed the sons of Lir. "My dear brothers, the end of our time here has come. We shall now go to visit our father and our people." And her brothers were glad when they heard this. Then they rose lightly from the face of the sea and flew eastward with joyful hopes till they reached Shee Finnaha. But when they alighted, they found the place deserted and solitary, its halls all ruined and overgrown with rank grass and forests of nettles. No houses, no fire, no mark of human habitation. Then the four swans drew close together, and they uttered 3 loud mournful cries of sorrow. And Finola chanted this lay: "What meaneth this sad, this fearful change, that withers my heart with woe? The house of my father all joyless and lone, its halls and its gardens with weeds overgrown, a dreadful and strange overthrow. No conquering heroes, no hounds for the chase, no shields in array on its walls, no bright silver goblets, no gay cavalcades, no youthful assemblies or high-born maids to brighten its desolate halls. An omen of sadness, the home of our youth, all ruined, deserted and bare. Alas for the chieftain, the gentle and brave, his glories and sorrows are stilled in the grave, and we left to live in despair. From ocean to ocean, from age unto age, we have lived to the fullness of time. Through a life such as men never heard of we've passed. In suffering and sorrow our doom has been cast by our stepmother's pitiless crime." The children of Lir remained that night in the ruins of the palace, the home of their forefathers, where they themselves had been nursed, and several times during the night they chanted their sad, sweet fairy music. Early next morning they left Shee Finnaha and flew west to Inishglora, where they alighted on a small lake. There they began to sing so sweetly that all the birds of the district gathered in flocks round them on the lake and on its shore to listen to them, so that the little lake came to be called the Lake of the Bird Flocks. During the day the birds used to fly to distant points of the coast to feed, now to Inishkea of the lonely crane, now to Achill, and sometimes southwards to Dunn's sea rocks, and to many other islands and headlands along the shore of the western sea, but they returned to Inishglora every night. They lived in this manner till Holy Patrick came to Erin with the pure faith, and until Saint Kemmoch came to Inishglora. The first night Kemmoch came to the island, the children of Lir heard his bell at early matin time, ringing faintly in the distance, and they trembled greatly and started and ran wildly about, for the sound of the bell was strange and dreadful to them, and its tones filled them with great fear. The 3 brothers were more affrighted than Finola, so that she was left quite alone. But after a time they came to her, and she asked them, "Do you know, my brothers, what sound is this?" And they answered, "We have heard a faint, fearful voice, but we know not what it is." "This is the voice of the Christian bell," said Finola, "and now the end of our suffering is near. For this bell is the signal that we shall soon be freed from our spell and released from our life of suffering, for God has willed it." Pardon me. Freya says, joining a little bit late, but so pleased to be here. Greetings to all from Sweden. You're very welcome along this evening, Freya, trusting that you're in good form and in good health. And don't worry, because you can catch, of course, the story on the video when it's put up. And she chanted this lay: "Listen, ye swans, to the voice of the bell, the sweet bell we've dreamed of for many a year. Its tones floating by on the night breezes tell that the end of our long life of sorrow is near. Listen, ye swans, to the heavenly strain, 'tis the anchoret tolling his soft matin bell. He has come to release us from sorrow, from pain, from the cold and tempestuous shores where we dwell. Trust in the glorious Lord of the sky, he will free us from Eva's druidical spell. Be thankful and glad, for our freedom is nigh, and listen with joy to the voice of the bell." Then her brothers became calm, and the 4 swans remained listening to the music of the bell till the cleric had finished his matins. "Let us sing our music now," said Finola, and they chanted a low, sweet, plaintive strain of fairy music, to praise and thank the great High King of heaven and earth. Kemach heard the music from where he stood, and he listened with great astonishment. But after a time it was revealed to him that it was the Children of Lir who sang that music, and he was glad, for it was to seek them that he had come. Samantha Healy says, "Hello everyone, sorry midway in, been applauding our medics to say thank you." Thank you for joining us, Samantha, you're very welcome. And indeed, at the outset of tonight's web stream, I invited everybody to say a special thanks to all of the frontline workers in the health system and in the governments who are battling this awful virus and who are doing their very best to stem it and to prevent it from becoming the catastrophe that it has the potential to become. When morning dawned, he came to the shore of the lake, and he saw the 4 white swans swimming on the water. He spoke to them and asked them, were they the Children of Lir? They replied, "We are indeed the Children of Lir, who were changed long ago into swans by our wicked stepmother." "I give God thanks that I have found you," said Kemach, "for it is on your account I have come to this little island, in preference to all the other islands of Erin. Come ye now to land, and trust in me, for it is in this place that you are destined to be freed from your enchantment." So they, filled with joy on hearing the words of the cleric, came to the shore and placed themselves under his care. He brought them to his own house, and, sending for a skilful workman, he caused him to make 2 bright, slender chains of silver, and he put a chain between Finola and Aid, and the other chain to put between Fiachra and Con. So they lived with him, listening to his instructions day by day, and joining in his devotions. They were the delight and joy of the cleric, and he loved them with his whole heart, and the swans were so happy that the memory of all the misery they had suffered during their long life on the waters caused them neither distress nor sorrow now. And we are into the last chapter of the story of the fate of the Children of Lir. And for those of you who have just recently joined us, don't worry if you've missed out on the story. It will be saved as a video onto the Facebook page, and also will be available immediately after the webcast on the Mythical Ireland YouTube page, where you can catch up. So they're facebook.com/Mythical Ireland if you're not there already, or youtube.com/Mythical Ireland. The king who ruled over Connacht at this time was Larngan, the son of Colman, and his queen was Decca, the daughter of Finnan, king of Munster. And the same king and queen whom Eva had spoken of in her prophecy long ages before. Now word was brought to Queen Decca regarding these wonderful speaking swans, and their whole history was related to her, so that even before she saw them, she could not help loving them, and she was seized with a strong desire to have them herself. So she went to the king and besought him that he would go to Kemach and get her the swans. But Larngan said that he did not wish to ask them from Kemach. Whereupon Decca grew indignant, and she declared that she would not sleep another night in the palace till he had obtained the swans for her. So she left the palace that very hour and fled southwards towards her father's home. Larngan, when he found she had gone, sent in haste after her, with word that he would try to procure the swans. But the messengers did not overtake her till she had reached Killaloe. However, she returned with them to the palace, and as soon as she had arrived, the king sent to Kemach to request that he would send the birds to the queen. But Kemach refused to give them. Larngan became very angry at this, and he set out at once for the cleric's house. As soon as he had come, he asked the cleric whether it was true that he had refused to give the swans to the queen. And when Kemach answered that it was quite true, the king, being very wroth, went up to where the swans stood, and seizing the 2 silver chains, one in each hand, he drew the birds from the altar and turned towards the door of the church, intending to bring them by force to the queen, while Kemach followed him, much alarmed lest they should be injured. The king had proceeded only a little way, when suddenly the white feathery robes faded and disappeared, and the swans regained their human shape, Finola being transformed into an extremely old woman, and the 3 sons into 3 feeble old men, white-haired and bony and wrinkled. When the king saw this, he started with affright and instantly left the place without speaking one word, while Kemach reproached and denounced him very bitterly. As for the children of Lir, they turned towards Kemach, and Finola spoke. Come, holy cleric, and baptize us without delay, for our death is near. You will grieve after us, O Kemach, but in truth you are not more sorrowful at parting from us than we are at parting from you. Make our grave here and bury us together, and as I often sheltered my brothers when we were swans, so let us be placed in the grave. Con standing near me at my right side, Fekra at my left, and Aid before my face. Come, holy priest, with book and prayer, baptize and shrive us here. Haste, cleric, haste, for the hour has come, and death at last is near. Dig our grave, a deep, deep grave, near the church we loved so well, this little church where first we heard the voice of the Christian bell. As oft in life, my brothers dear, were soothed by me to rest, Fekra and Con beneath my wings, and Aid before my breast. So place the 2 on either hand, close like the love that bound me. Place Aid as close before my face, and twine their arms around me. Thus shall we rest for evermore, my brothers dear and I. Haste, cleric, haste, baptize and shrive, for death at last is nigh. And Christopher Weidner says, good evening. Hello, Christopher. Fáilte, you're very welcome. Then the children of Lir were baptized, and they died immediately. And when they died, Kemach looked up, and lo, he saw a vision of 4 lovely children, with light silvery wings and faces all radiant with joy. They gazed on him for a moment, but even as they gazed, they vanished upwards, and he saw them no more. And he was filled with gladness, for he knew they had gone to heaven. But when he looked down on the 4 bodies lying before him, he became sad and wept. And Kemach caused a wide grave to be dug near the little church, and the children of Lir were buried together, as Finola had directed, Con at her right hand, Fekra at her left, and Aid standing before her face. And he raised a grave mound over them, placing a tombstone on it, with their names engraved in Ogham, after which he uttered a lament for them, and their funeral rites were performed. So far, we have related the sorrowful story of the fate of the children of Lir, and thus ends the sorry, sad, tragic story of the children of Lir. Sad and happy at the same time, and it is very interesting with regard to the vision of the children with their wings. that it would appear from the most ancient of times that swans, that graceful, beautiful, white bird that was seen in the proximity of the great monuments, should also have been considered something of a psychopomp, an otherworld guide, a bird that was to magically help to transport the souls of those who had passed on from this world to the next world, wherever that world may be. In the case of the Cygnus Enigma, which myself and Richard wrote about in Island of the Setting Sun, we believed that the ancient people of the Boyne Valley thought that the birds travelling towards the north were perhaps bringing the souls of the dead to that undying region of the sky where the circumpolar stars are, those which never set, including the Swan constellation, which for a short time in the Neolithic was seen to swoop down and to touch the earth and to go under it a little bit before coming back up again. And I often wondered, in regards to the story of the Children of Lir, whether their lashing to the rock in the Sea of Moyle was perhaps an indication of this time when the Swan constellation was seen to swoop down and perhaps stick to the earth a little bit, as if it was blown and beaten there by a storm. And a highly recommended read with regard to the swans is The Cygnus Mystery by Andrew Collins. And Andrew, of course, was greatly enthralled to hear that there was a fantastic interest in swans in the Boyne Valley. And the other story pertaining to swans and Newgrange, because we told the story of Aengus, Aislinge Aenguso, a few days ago. Just double check here which episode it was. I think it might have been episode 9. The other story, of course, pertaining to swans and Newgrange is the story of how Dectine chased the swans who were eating up all of the vegetation at Awan Macha in Armagh. Yes, indeed. Episode 9, Aislinge Aenguso, The Dream Vision of Aengus Og. And I'll just paste in a link as a comment where you can see all the previous episodes. Camilla Relland says, Cygnus, yes, indeed. And the love heart, yes, it's not difficult to be in love with Cygnus, that constellation that appears to glide along the heavenly Boyne River, the Milky Way. The other story being that when Dectine and her party chased the swans from Awan Macha, night fell upon them and it started to snow, and they had arrived at Brunabonia, and so they took shelter for the night. And she had a dream, and in a dream she was told that she was going to have a son and that she should name him Setanta. And later it was revealed to her that the man, or the deity, the personage who had appeared to her in the dream was none other than Lú Láfada, Lú Samaldánach, Lú Macethna. And Setanta was born, and of course the famous Setanta, who became the warrior Cuchulainn, the hound of the smith Cullen. And that is how that miracle child was conceived at Newgrange. The other one, of course, being Aengus Og, conceived to Dagda and Bowen. And with the anticipation that the third part of the Dinshenachus is going to arrive either tonight or in the morning, I'm hoping that perhaps tomorrow evening, tomorrow's Friday, tomorrow's webcast might be a little bit earlier than usual, tomorrow evening, that I can tell you about Bowen and the whole story of how the Boyne River was created. Anyway, at this stage, I'm happy to read comments and take questions. We're a little bit earlier than usual. We normally go at least an hour, so we've plenty of time if anybody wants to ask questions or make comments. Robert Arbuckle says, my wee heart hurts. Such a beautiful and interesting story, yet so sad. I think in part, Robert, and this is the first function of mythology, I think such stories are meant to gird us for the realities of life, and for the realities that if we don't pass on first, that we see loved ones, friends and relatives, we see them pass on, and we're greatly saddened. And don't forget that when they return to Shí Fiannacha and they find the place overgrown and in ruins, you know, this is in part a metaphor for growing up, isn't it? And for the loss of innocence that growing up brings. That when we are children and we're living at home, providing we live in a happy home, and I know many people don't, but for those who are lucky enough to have been brought up in a happy home, that you think you're going to live forever, and you think life is going to go on forever. And when you're a child, you want to grow up fast and you want to be an adult because you see all the freedoms that adults have, and you don't realise all the responsibilities that they have too. And then all of a sudden, in the blinking of an eye, it's like years and years have passed just like that. And suddenly you're looking back, and perhaps some of the people that you shared that upbringing with have passed away, and perhaps the house that you grew up in is in ruins. I know that my own mother's house that she grew up in as a young as a teenager and a very young adult, I remember seeing that house before it was demolished. And I remember thinking how it must have been very sad for my mother to walk past that house, knowing that herself and all her siblings had grown up there, and all the memories they had of the place, and to see the grass 6 feet high, and to see weeds growing out of all the broken windows, and to see holes in the roofs. And that's just life, isn't it? It's like, 1 minute we're young and innocent, and next we're adults, and we're burdened with all these things, and the aches and pains and the tragedies of life that these mythologies gird us for and prepare us for. Alex Casterson says the children of Lir are the gods of hope and peace. Hail, Lord of the Sea and his children. Can't wait for tomorrow's story. So this is such a nice way to end a day. Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, it's been good for me too, I have to say. I mean, I have to admit to having suffered from a certain amount of anxiety at the outset of this situation, and I've become more relaxed. I've been enjoying these so immensely, and enjoying the lovely warm commentary and the lovely emails afterwards. People who aren't able to maybe comment or watch live, who've been watching the videos afterwards, and it's lovely, and it warms the heart, and it gives us a reason to reach out to each other again as humans, and to forget about viewing each other as competitors in this greedy capitalist world of ours. That from time to time we should just settle back and relax, read a few stories, and have a few scaly together, maybe a few drinks as well. But look, I'm not going to start now. And not on camera. Anyway, Reese Casterson says, awesome story. I look forward to the next story. Excellent story. Well, thank you, Reese. Very nice of you to join us. Aaron Durrett, he did a good job of writing the songs of the characters in rhymed verse. Are they based on anything, or did he make them himself with no basis? Well, I can only assume, Aaron, because of the rhyming, that they are they're translated, but they're also changed to rhyme. And I must actually look for an Irish version of the original, because you can be guaranteed if you translate the original directly that there'll be no rhyming whatsoever. So yes, he did indeed. Alex, all your hard work is much appreciated at these times, and as all of the lovely warm commentary is appreciated, and the questions. Robert says, so true, Anthony. Such a wise insight to the story and life. Thank you for sharing. Thanks indeed, Robert. You're very welcome. Adele Perth. Hello, Adele. Finally made another live. Been catching up and binge watching your broadcasts to catch up. Thanks. I'm loving them. Well, Adele, it's so good to see you. I really earnestly hope that you are keeping very well, and that all your family and loved ones and all your friends are in good stead. That everybody is sensibly doing everything they can in their power to stop the spread of this virus. And at the same time, that while you're physically distancing yourself, that you're not socially isolating yourself. And it's so good to see you. I can't remember, is it 3 years ago now when we met in the summertime? And trusting that you still have fond and great memories of Ireland, as many people do. Wendy Holmes says, Fionnuala is such a great character. I love her. Yeah, and she's so strong through the whole ordeal. She is the real shining light, as indeed many women are. And that's the thing that should not be suppressed in any sort of Christianization of the story. One wonders when the story actually originated, and if there was a sort of a pre-Christian version of it, which I think there likely was. And the whole thing about hearing the bell and converting to Christianity, that was the aspect of them, of the story, where they became saved, as it were. Their salvation came. One wonders if there was a pre-Christian version, and I've no doubt that there was. I actually really think that there was, but that's a hunch more than anything, not based on any particular scholarly reference that I've read. But it's something interesting, and it's something I must go back and look at, is the idea that perhaps the transformation that happens is indicative of that transformation that was a general belief. Don't forget, Etain takes the form of a swan, and in fact her lover takes the form of a swan in her third iteration to escape with her through the smoke hole in the ceiling of the assembly. And that's something that somebody pointed out last night or the night before. And indeed also, don't forget that Angus takes swan form, and that his lover Care is a changeling who's able to change year after year. 1 year into a swan, the next year as a human woman, and the next year as a swan, the next year as a human, and so on and so forth. And Angus has to take the form of a swan in order to have her love, and that they go to Brunabonia together, and they go inside Brunabonia. And I'm wondering whether that isn't some remnant of a shamanic rite or a shamanic belief, where it was perhaps believed, and maybe that's one of the things they did in their rites at the winter solstice, in their bringing of the fragmented remains into the chamber of Sheedenbroga, into the chamber of Newgrange, that perhaps one of the aspects was that perhaps they wore swan feathers, perhaps they wore bird feathers, and perhaps that they brought aspects of that belief in there, because they thought of this great transformation that was occurring, that when somebody physically died, that they took on some form of spiritual wings and were waiting for the sun to draw them out to fly into this heavenly otherworld. And when the sun goes down and the stars come out, one of the undying stars is the swan of the sky, Cygnus, which appears to fly along the heavenly Boyne, the Boyne River of the sky, Ballach na Bo Finna, the way of the white cow, and the earthly version, Owen Bo Finna, the river of the white cow. The Curious Celf says his wee old mammy was on the phone. Herself and my dad are in their 80s and self-isolated. She just wanted a wee chat, bless her. Well, I hope that she is keeping well, and delighted to hear that they're sensibly self-isolating. And I know that has to be difficult for the elderly people especially. And we send them our best wishes. It would be great if some of these people had access to the technologies, and I'm sure a lot of them do, that perhaps if they could set up a little Facebook account, or perhaps sign up to YouTube, that they could come on and watch the episodes, and join in if somebody could show them how to comment. Now, I know you can't do that directly. You have to do it remotely, but maybe it's one of those things that can be done. Mary Miller says, wonderful to keep the great archetypal stories alive. It's so important to teach these to each generation. We have such a rich mythology. Thanks, Anthony, for doing this. Mary, it is my great honour and my great joy to be able to do this. Really it is. I'm so honoured to be able to try to carry on these stories in some form. And don't forget that we're indebted to the many scholars and the many people who worked hard, especially in the 20th century, mostly in the 20th century, where great efforts were made to save a lot of folklore and mythology, because the word of mouth, the oral tradition was dying out. And of course, we have to pay a great debt of gratitude to our friends, the Christian monks in the great monasteries, who laboured long and hard in darkness and in poor conditions and in cold, probably hungry half the time, to write carefully in Irish the stories that they had heard, even those pertaining to pre-Christian pagan mythology, that we can have a much richer corpus, if I could use that word, a much richer collection of tales and lore today than we could possibly have had if it weren't for the diligent work of all these people of the past. Paul Cochran says, is their burial site known? That is a very good question. I don't immediately think so. Hang on now. I'm just going to do a quick search here while you ask that question. I'm sure that there has to be a folk belief somewhere in Ireland that says the Children of Lir are buried there. I'm just not immediately familiar with it. And maybe Paul Gowran, I have to get the pronunciation right. Maybe Paul, we could throw that question out to the audience, anybody who's watching. Does anybody know, especially our Irish friends, does anybody know of a tradition or a belief that says the Children of Lir are buried in a particular location and a particular cairn or mound is associated with them? Samantha Healy, I suspect that some of these stories were reworded, playing down the strength and to wisdom of women by the church after the 7th or 8th century, once the rivalries between the churches. Well, I think you're probably right to an extent, Samantha, because of the patriarchal nature of the new religion. And it offered us, in terms of the feminine, if it offered us Mary, first of all, but of course in the Irish context, Bridget, Mura na Nail, you know, that the female wasn't entirely suppressed, but I suppose Mura na Nail was offered to us on the terms of the church, as it were. And what had come before was very much a pantheon. In fact, so much so that it's often difficult to disentangle who exactly was the chief, if there was a chief, you know. It seems that there were a certain number of the Dedanans that held similar ranks, such that, for instance, it's often said on the one hand that Dagda was chief of the Dedanans, and on the other hand it was said that Manannán was chief of the Dedanans. And of course, when Dagda's glory wanes, as it were, his seat on the throne is yielded to his son Bovgerug, you know. Yeah, all very interesting and I suppose provoking, possibly much discussion. Aaron Durrett, is there a church associated with them? Well, that's an interesting question. I've done a search for the Children of Lir on the school's folklore site, and needless to say, I have a lot coming up. So what I need to do is to try and find out if there's one particular site that's associated with being their burial place. Hang on now, I'll actually just add that as a search term. Children of Lir burial. No matches found. Okay, so I'm not aware of one. But perhaps, and if you're following up and you're watching this on video afterwards, please feel free to reach out by email, mythicalireland@gmail.com, and let us know if there's a mound in your locality, or a church, as Aaron asks, that's associated with the Children of Lir. I'm sure there's a church associated with Saint Kemach. Let's have a look here. No matches found. And I wonder, because Joyce renders it, I think it's Kemoc is how he renders Kemach. And I wonder whether that is, in the Irish version, that's probably spelt differently. So we'll have to find out and get back to you on that one. Alex says, another vision I heard said it was part of Ireland. Inishglera, I think I've spelled it wrong, not sure if you recognise it. Yeah, that was one of the islands that, Inishglora, wasn't it, was the island where they spent their final 300 years on the Western Sea. Anna Pitterina says, the Bill, Cow and Calf rocks off the coast from Alahis. The spell was broken when they heard bells from the church in the village and came ashore in human form. Oh, very interesting. Cow and Calf rocks, because we have the same with Rockabill, Cnook Dabilla, the hill of, well, the ostensibly the dog, the lapdog or the hound of Bowen, and the cow and the calf, the story of the magic cow and her calf being brought down the coast from Ulster by Balor, the Fomorian, and when they crossed the Boyne, the cow fell behind and the calf looked back and screamed, or was it the calf fell behind, sorry, and the cow turned around and saw how far away from home they were and screamed, and the sun rose. Well, Balor lifted his giant eye, his baleful eye, which is the sun rising, and petrified them, and they became rocks. So please, Anna, if you wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind, tell me more about that story. Perhaps send me an email, mythicalireland@gmail.com. I'd love to hear more. The children were by now very old men and women, and they died shortly thereafter, and were buried under the large white boulders found outside the village. So is that Allihies? Is that where the Children of Lir are said to be buried? But I'm just very interested in the connection. You say the Bill, Cow and Calf rocks. I want to know more about those. So Anna seems to be suggesting Allihies, pardon me, Allihies, Children of Lir. Is that right? Let me see if there's a suggestion. Children of Lir mythical site is coming up there as a suggestion. On the Ring of Beara blog, just outside the lovely seaside village of Allihies, is a small sacred site dedicated to the Children of Lir, Clan Lir. Their lives are celebrated in the age. So there you go, there's a link. Thank you very much, Anna, for your information there. I'm going to paste that in as a comment, so the rest of you who are interested in following that up can have a look. Oh, and Brendan is a step ahead of us. Brendan Kinch has pasted a link and says this mentions a burial stone for the children. Thanks a million for that. Samantha Healy says somewhere in Cork, possibly. While I've been blustering away, waffling away, the others have done the detective work and found out the answer. There's a mound of Lir in Allihies, apparently. I don't know if I'm getting the pronunciation of that right. So very good. Allihies. Yeah, brilliant. Everybody is suddenly up to speed. Anyway, if there are further questions or comments, I will take them. Otherwise, we'll have to say farewell for another evening. Just as usual, just to mention, if you would like to help support the web streams and the blogs and the videos and everything that I do, and support the web hosting and the maintenance and everything else, perhaps you would consider becoming a patron of Mythical Ireland at patreon.com, patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. And yes, one of these evenings I'm going to have to bring in the dog, and I think what I'm going to try and organise is to have him here. Well, Saskia, I think, I don't think she'll sit on my lap, to be honest, but she's the quiet one. She doesn't give us much trouble. Coda, who's the pup, is big and bold, and he will not sit still for very long. If I can get him here and even to come up on my lap and to, but he'll probably sniff around, and he'll probably be sniffing around the desk, and he'll probably be knocking things around the place, and he might even knock the cameras. But yeah, we'll say hello one of the evenings. And it appears to be it for this evening. Well, thank you all very much for joining us. And again, just to wrap up by saying, stay positive. Stay firm of mind. Don't panic. Keep calm. We are being asked clearly by Mother Earth. We are being asked by the Cailleach to consider our actions. We are being asked just to calm down and just to slow the pace of our lives a little bit and to settle a little bit. And to stay indoors generally, and to do a little bit more reflection, and to stop scurrying about the place in cars and aeroplanes polluting the atmosphere. And in a way, that is, although distancing us physically, is actually bringing us together in a way that we never would have thought possible even a couple of months ago. Good night to one and all. Ihawa, Slán go fóill. Slán go fóill means bye for now. Gonairi on Boher live. May the road rise to meet you, an old Irish blessing. And may we be able to join and gather together again tomorrow evening for the next story, which may possibly be Bowen. But there are loads of stories, loads and loads of stories. And I see a lot of people saying thank you. Thank you all, because you all make this possible. Otherwise, I would be speaking to a mirror and talking here to myself. It is good to have you all here. And I'm loving the way you're all talking to each other in the comments, both on YouTube and on Facebook. It's heartening. And so it's bringing us together across all of the different distances. And I know some of you in Australia and on the west coast of the States. In Australia, you're already in the 27th. You're in Friday already. And in the west coast of the States, sure, it's only in the middle of the day there, you know. It's wonderful for us to be able to join together like this. Anyway, have a safe and healthy evening, and hopefully we'll see you all again tomorrow evening. I will announce the time sometime in the late morning or around lunchtime tomorrow. I will likely do an earlier broadcast tomorrow, probably around, I would say 5, maybe 6 p.m. rather than the usual 8 p.m. So it might be 2 or 3 hours earlier than normal. If you can join us, it would be great to have you. If you can't, don't forget that you can catch up on the video links afterwards. Slán agus bannacht ihawa to each of you. Each and every one of you even. And also to all of you on Facebook who are still watching, because I shut down the Facebook feed first. Very good night to you all. Thank you for watching.